Hey, this is Jared and Nate over at eCarrier Check. I'm excited about today, Nate. We've got an awesome topic. We're talking about diversification. And we're going to cover on diversification not only from a personal standpoint, but diversification on a business standpoint that will kind of open your eyes or open your mind to, really running your business as not only a broker, but as a professional, maybe as a carrier, as a dispatcher, whatever it may be. So, Nate, tell us about eCarrier Check, how people can find us, what they can do. Just give us a rundown on that.
Yeah. So for those of you that are newer, eCarrier Check is a platform for you to find some leads, right? So for those of you looking for carriers, those most popular, carriers, those reefers, those vans, flatbeds, whatever it may be. Well, we're here to find you leads, not only for the carriers, but the shippers, right? And we're here to keep you organized. So our platform's awesome to use. For those of you that are interested in checking us out, go to ecarriercheck.com. We're also on YouTube. We do demos Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. So a couple ways to get a hold of us. Just check out ecarriercheck.com, like I mentioned, and give us a call and schedule yourself a demo.
Nice. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I almost feel like sometimes our site is we were trying to find the scrunched up word, everything was, SoFi this year or all these kind of random words. We're almost like a sourcing utility platform.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have the ability to source carriers, brokers, shippers,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we also have a way for you to communicate to all those people, keep yourself organized. So we're like a sourcing utility platform.
Yeah.
So maybe if we scrunch that word together, it'd be like a so utility or SOAR utility, maybe.
I like where you're heading there. I like that.
Which I think is kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, Nate, I want to talk about diversification today, and we'll really hit on, not only some scars that I felt as a freight broker, as a carrier, when I worked for a large carrier, some of the scars that we had because we weren't diversified enough. Right. The economy can shift in so many different ways. Look at this. I mean, it was a month ago, we weren't even at, $3 a gallon in diesel, and now it's at $7.
Yeah. Insane.
So, but let's talk personally first, and then let's dive into some of the business sake points. A couple of things that I really feel that are important personally to diversify. We get a lot of people that are out there that are, partially freight brokers. And then they're also doing real estate, or they're partially in this business and then this business. And, I come from a standpoint where I think side gigs are important. I think you have to be diversified to a certain extent. But here's my word of caution is I really think it's important that if you're going to do something, you do it all in. You go 100%. And so if you're going to become a dispatcher, if you're going to become a carrier, if you're going to become a freight broker, go all in, immerse yourself into that industry, because it's one of those things that I really feel like if you're just half in and half this, you're going to become that old saying, the jack of all trades, but the master of none. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't necessarily. I'm also a big Jim Collins guy, and he says something that's I think is really interesting. He says, shoot bullets before you fire cannonballs. Okay, so if you're just testing the waters, am I okay at a freight broker? Am I okay at a dispatcher? It's hard to shoot bullets and cannonballs when you're just buying trucks, right? You're buying a $110,000 truck. That's a whole nother kettle of fish, if you will. But I think that in diversification in your personal aspect, I think it's kind of important that you burn your boats. Nate, what do you think? I mean, you've had a lot of different roles in your career. What have you seen that's worked best for you?
I like how you put how you love that diversity, but going all in. If you refer back to some of our videos, obviously when you put yourself in diverse situations, it can be stressful, but I love how you put that. You definitely have to be all in and don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Because you're going to grow. You're going to grow with whatever you're doing. If you're in real estate and you're a broker, make sure you're going all in. Definitely. I love that. That's probably the biggest thing. I'll back that up.
Yeah. From a personal standpoint, I really think, take the time to really immerse yourself. Any industry you're in, If you become and you get into this industry, it's important. So let's jump into the actual business aspects of things, though. I want to start it off with a quick story. When I worked for a large LTL company, they were huge, but they were a fairly large. We had 200 drivers, and one of those days came where we really wished we were more diverse. And I'll give you an example here. So we had a company that we were doing more than 40% of our daily revenue with. Okay. And I kind of keep this number in mind as you guys are looking at things. If you get to a point where you have a client that's producing more than 40%, you've got to continue to diversify. Now, I know you got to get started as a freight broker, you're all in, right? As a dispatcher, you're all in. You get one account, they're 100% of your revenue, right? But you've got to keep just getting hungry to protect your business, because what happened was, I remember this day really well. We were, kind of rocking and rolling. Things were moving along really well. And it was a huge company. They changed their essentially they put out a bid. We didn't get the bid, and we lost all of that business overnight.
Yeah.
And now you're scrambling. You're going, okay, I got 40% of my business, in that particular world in LTL. Now, I've got drivers in places I don't need anymore. I've got administrators in places that I don't need anymore, right? I've got a lot of things going on, and you're like, oh man, I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
Have you had those moments where you're just like, oh man, I put too much into this? Have you had that?
Yeah, definitely. Our program here at staff, you mentioned a good point. You put all your eggs in one basket, that can lead to those risks, right? So I love that. And some of you are probably thinking, well, how do I be diverse? Well, eCarrier Check can help you with that, and we can show you that.
Yeah, absolutely. So from a carrier standpoint, and we talk to a lot of carriers. We talk to carriers almost every day, and a lot of carriers, 90% of the carriers that we talk to actually are, they're getting loads off load boards. It's the easiest way to get loaded. So they're pretty much, if you look at it from a risk standpoint, they're 100% into getting loads from brokers. Now, they may be getting it from a bunch of different brokers, but they're 100% into, those brokers. And so what if the market changes? What if those brokers find somebody that's going to do it less than you, right? So here's how I recommend diversifying in this. And I think this is important is if you're hauling general freight, and we'll just talk general freight for today, right? If you're hauling general freight and you get a bunch of freight off of load boards, then let's diversify that broker mix to start. So number one, you get on eCarrier Check and you find local brokers, because local brokers have local freight. And you start to add those to the mix, because if you can find other people outside of the load boards, now you're a little bit more diverse. You're still dealing with brokers, but if the market sways on the load board, hopefully some of those relationships you've built locally won't actually sway as well. Now, things move quickly in this industry, but at the end of the day, if you pie charted your accounts, and who you're getting your freight from, you've got brokers off the load boards, you've got brokers off eCarrier Check. You've got to push yourself to get direct shippers. I can't tell you how important it is. Nate, when we talk to a lot of carriers, how many of them really have direct shippers?
Not a whole lot. And we do get a lot of calls is, how do I find direct shippers? And like I mentioned, eCarrier Check, and we can help you. And but I think it's important to find those direct shippers and grow that relationship.
Yeah,
definitely.
And from a carrier standpoint, people want to hear from you. You're a carrier. So you don't have to be a salesman. You have to tell them, hey, I got a 53-foot van in Columbus, Ohio, every week on Thursday and Friday. And you just have to add value through communication.
Yeah.
And I know sales is tough. Nobody wants to pick up the phone. Everybody wants to text or email. I totally get all this. But the easiest way to success, in my opinion, is picking up the phone and starting to build relationships.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're a carrier, and we're going to break down each segment here, right? Carriers, brokers, dispatchers. If you're a carrier, though, you've got to be able to diversify your business with not only just brokers from the load boards, brokers off of another aspect. It can be carrier check. We obviously are like that, but it can be another way of finding local brokers. And then you got to get some direct accounts. Now, let's fast forward to some of our more diverse carriers. Okay. They've got direct accounts. They're getting loads off of load boards. Let's talk some strategy for just a few minutes for carriers. I really am a big believer that, carriers need to start looking at what industries they're serving, right? So for instance, if you're a carrier that's in, the pipe and oil and gas field, right? Versus a carrier that may be, doing general commodities, or, you're doing plastics, and all of a sudden there's a plastic shortage or the oil industry shuts down, guess what? You're going to start to lose that. Right. So I think it's also important that every load, whether you get it from a freight broker or you get it from a direct shipper, I think every load you need to start thinking, what industries am I serving?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a beautiful thing. And I'm going to refer back to you, Carrier Check, again. What's help you get diverse with commodity, and that's something we can do.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to find direct shippers by, all right, I do a lot of steel, maybe I need to transition to some lumber, or, I do a lot of rental equipment. Maybe I need to transition to some manufacturers,
and I think that's another way of getting yourself out there too. The more you diverse yourself, the more connections you have, more relationships, word of mouth, right? That helps. So it's always good to have that.
Yeah. And we're talking about diversification because at the end of the day, our hope for you guys and our hope for our clients is that we help you lower as much risk in your business as possible, right? I mean, that really allows you to, sway, if you will. You can sway your capacity. Again, we're talking about carriers. You can go, okay, I've been hauling insulation for this guy for quite a while. Insulation's down because contracting, contractors aren't doing that much. It's winter time. I need to get into something else that's in winter. Maybe start moving furnaces, right? Yeah. And so start to find those things. And again, you're going to have to pick up the phone. You had the guts. You had the determination to start a business. Damn it, pick up the phone and find somebody else. So I think that's really an aspect to not only help you with peace of mind at night. You're not all in on one account, but it allows you to think through that. So any other thoughts on carriers at all?
No, not at the moment. I think we pretty much hit it on the head there. That was good info there.
Yeah. Definitely. So let's hit on brokers, because brokers, obviously this is the last segment of the industry that I was just in. I was a freight broker for 4 years before I jumped into software. And, from my end of things, I always watched my percentages of counts, right? I always watched those industries like we talked about. But, from a freight brokerage standpoint, now we serve a lot of different types of freight brokerages, right? Yeah. There's the guys that just have one and it's just one broker. Yeah. But then there's the other guys that have, 4 to 6 to 10 and upwards of 20, right? You need to measure your freight brokers and who's producing the most. Because what if that person, he or her, leaves, right? If Eric or Andrea are your number ones, how much risk do you have in that business? As an owner, how involved were you with, as an owner, how involved were you with those clients? Because what ends up happening if a freight broker leaves, and I'm a big believer in I don't like non-competes. I think people need to go where they feel the most comfortable and the most welcomed. I'm a big believer in just wanting people to be a part of your team. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that's something that, if they don't feel like they're a good fit, then hopefully we help to make them a better person. But I think as an owner, as you're starting to get brokers underneath you, agents underneath you, you really need to understand, well, who are their businesses that they're working with? Who's their contacts, right? And just get involved, right? I think that's really important.
I agree.
So freight brokers, you're still measuring industry. You're still measuring, where you're getting those loads. As a freight broker, obviously, you're looking at you only have direct business, right? Now, in your world, the goal is to diversify within the industries and even regionally as a freight broker. Yeah. I don't know how often you get calls from the East Coast versus the West Coast, But, if you're on the East Coast and you've got a bunch of accounts on the East Coast and a bunch of accounts on the West Coast, it's just one of those things that it's nice to diversify regionally. It's nice to diversify in seasons, because, if you're in that general freight aspect as a freight broker, you can jump from commodity to commodity to commodity, and just kind of live in the, I live in the nursery world, or I can live in, you know what I mean?
And you'll stay consistently busy too as well. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly. So, again, it really, comes down to just continue to add value to your clients, and trying to make sure that all of your eggs aren't in one basket. In fact, something that was kind of interesting in our world as a freight brokerage, we were small enough that, we had 7 brokers. One of our accounts was over 34%. Actually, at one point, it was over 40%. Now, we diversified down, but sometimes when you just have to grab all the revenue, when you're hungry, and it's like, well, this is working, let's go.
Right.
You just got to be careful, because we ended up losing that account. We had too many brokers. Then what do you do?
Right.
And everybody's grinding, picking up the phone, just going.
Right.
But definitely take the time to diversify in your businesses. I can't stress that enough.
Yep. And like I mentioned, for those of you that are new here, reach out to us. We'll help you. We'll show you how to be diverse, and you're not alone here. Definitely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the last segment that I really want to hit on is dispatchers. We talk to so many dispatchers. I love their drive. They're out there willing to help carriers, manage their loads better, find them loads. They're finding loads off of load boards. And so there's 2 different functions of diversification with dispatchers: operations and sales, right? The first aspect in that is, we get a lot of dispatchers that are just dispatching one particular type of equipment, right? They're dispatching straight trucks or hot shots or vans or reefers or whatever it may be. And I really think it's important that you spread out. Now, you can get 5 or 6, go all in, get 5 or 6 different, hotshot guys. Make sure you've got different types of equipment in your diversity chain.
Right. I love that too, because let's say you get into a bind, right, and you do need a flatbed, it's always good to have that connection. So I think it's really good for that. And e-carrier check can help.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that, Nate. I really do. So from a dispatcher standpoint, obviously, I do recommend you're reaching out and cold calling different types of carriers. So we get the question a lot. It's like, well, how do you know what types of carriers there are? Well, in our world, because we're built on a VIN database, we know if you're calling a flatbed or a hotshot or a reefer or a van, whatever it may be. And so that allows you to make those calls. Maybe, in our system, maybe you make a list essentially that says, okay, this is just for vans, right? Or this is just for hotshots, or whatever it may be. And you can see,
right. That way, the next time your shipper calls and they ask you, well, I need a tanker or a flatbed. Well, hey, we got you. So.
Exactly. So that's even actually brings up an interesting point within anybody's client mix, is you can get stuck in moving the same modes over and over for your clients. Yesterday, I had a guy talking to me about LTL, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I said, from an LTL standpoint, there's nothing wrong with being in that industry. It's kind of challenging knowing the classifications and those codes. But I said, once you get into that mode, you got to transition over to vans and flatbeds, because then you start to get a little more, as I like to call it, sticky with a client. And that allows you to be harder to replace.
I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So diversifying within a client, we talk about the milk lady a lot. She's in with that lady that does, she's hauling milk. Her risk is that she's only doing milk, right? Now she just started a brokerage, 6 months ago, 7 months ago. So that's her risk in that world. But if she would transition and say, hey, I'm doing a great job on tankers. What are the chances I can do some van work for you, or maybe other vendor tanker work? Diversify within your clients. I think that's really important, to find ways to get the different modes in that. Just find other ways to get stickier with your client. If you
Right.
will.
The more you be able to add value, like you mentioned, you'll be hard to get rid of. So
Exactly.
I like how you put that.
Exactly. So, as far as dispatchers, from the sales side of things, obviously you're calling different types of equipment. I really do think that it's important to not just get into a regional aspect, but don't get stuck in just working with East Coast carriers or just working with these carriers. If there's something major that happens, weather mainly, you could be stuck for a week. And it'd be nice to have, I got my North carriers, I got my South carriers, or I got my East Coast carriers or West Coast. So if there's crazy tornadoes, these tornadoes this last week or this week, honestly, and I'm praying for those families because it's insane what some of the pictures I've seen. It's going to put a damper on flatbeds out of the South for a while.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you're a dispatcher that had all their carriers out of the South, then what are you doing?
Exactly.
Your business isn't running for a week. So make sure you're diversified, not only industry wise, geographically wise, and equipment wise, and that should help you with those things. So, Nate, do you have any closing thoughts on diversification, or even what we should be looking at?
Like I mentioned, I think just being diverse is really going to help you in the long run. And like I mentioned, we're here to help you and show you how we can do that. We get lots of questions throughout the week, so I know that you're not the only one to have these questions. So just reach out to us. We'll show you how you can utilize eCarrier Check to be diverse, and you'll be successful.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate our community. Keep the questions coming. We get so many questions during the week, and we want to feature those on Fridays at 11 Eastern. So don't hesitate to send us questions, and we'll touch on anything. Even if it's a 2-minute video, we'll touch on anything. So thanks again for everything. You guys have an awesome day. Keep trucking. Keep doing what you're doing, and we'll talk later, okay?